Now, criminal activity in the country continues to plague all levels of society. The high crime rate is a sign of government's failure to protect its citizens. For many people, they have to turn to private investigators to assist them in dealing with crime. So what challenges do investigators have when dealing with the case? We're now joined by private investigator Steve Weston. He joins us now to unpack this issue. Mr. Weston, thank you very much for your time here on All Angles. Now, of course, many South Africans have the perception that police actually don't have the know-how to properly investigate cases. Is that a fair assumption?
To a degree it is, yes. The problem mainly being in the private sector is the costs involved in investigating properly and comprehensively to get a matter successfully prosecuted in court. And then, unfortunately, especially your more junior policemen do not have the knowledge, expertise or training to handle most complex cases, including fraud.
So then government is failing us to some degree then if they won't actually pump in adequate funds for police to be able to have those tools to fight crime.
I must agree with you. Our country, unfortunately, as anyone living here would know, especially with state capture being so great in the news, we're actually, you could get a lot of experience in this country in a number of matters, including fraud. And it just seems that, there seems to be a problem in the training of the new type of recruits we use in the police. And also the numbers that we have are far insufficient for what is required.
How big is private investigation in South Africa? I mean, I imagine because of how, our socio-economic standing as a country with so many people living under the poverty line, so many people unemployed, and you mentioning that private investigation is better because you have the tools and the funds. How big is it then in our country? Can people afford it?
Not many people can afford it. You find, for example, in scams, for some odd reason, the perpetrators are so good that some people have lost literally down to their last 100 rand. And that precludes them from paying for an investigation to happen privately. It's growing. I find personally, in the last 3 weeks, 21 days, I've had on scams alone from the internet, from Facebook, about 63 inquiries. So it is growing exponentially on a month-to-month basis.
So what's growing is not necessarily, if I'm understanding you correctly, not necessarily private investigation, but cybercrime is growing in South Africa.
It is indeed. I think part of the problem there is people are now so desperate with the situation, COVID 2.5 years, economy in general. They try all sorts of things. People are being persuaded, get-rich-quick schemes work, and they're just losing. It's like the lotto, spending your last 10 rand on a lotto ticket, and that is happening more and more now. It's really a desperate situation, I think.
Now, we know in that type of crime, our police officers are definitely not, they don't have enough tools to be able to fight cybercrime. So how many cases have you been able to basically, bring to, how many perpetrators have you been able to bring to book with your investigations?
That's the other difficult thing. Let's take the last 3 weeks, 63 inquiries, 3 paying clients. There are potential for 2 arrests. The other investigation is going to take at least about 18 to 24 months to complete. It's somewhat more complex, and the perpetrator's actually been working for at least 9 years that I'm aware of. So there are so far 27 people involved that have been victimized by him that I'm aware of. But you can imagine that takes much more effort and costs to do that type of investigation.
Mr. Weston, I don't know if you remember, a few months ago, we got, news from our Justice Department that, their offices at the Department of Justice also were hacked, etc. So this is clearly a growing trend in South Africa. You're talking about 63 cases in just 21 days. So what does this say about our crime intelligence?
Well, I shouldn't say what I really feel, but there's certainly problems in the effectiveness of crime intelligence. You know, it seems like certain investigation units and the courts have their hands tied to a degree, not totally, but let's say through a shortage of expertise and the financial resources to get the required expertise. We're all aware just by following the news of who's done what, so to speak. But to actually get to a conviction is a much more difficult process. And the training and knowledge that needs to be given to a policeman is lacking in a large way. It's going to take a while to get it right. Originally, the Scorpions were on a very good foot. It seems to have diminished somewhat with the change to the Hawks. But a lot of those people are still there with the knowledge and skills, and they have been sidelined politically, I think. And it's time for them to be let loose to do their work properly. I could imagine it's a bit embarrassing. Some of my friends that are there are a bit embarrassed these days, but the knowledge is available. Not enough people have the knowledge, but they can be trained, and the government needs to do that. Those decisions need to be made at ministerial level, and police head office needs to put their resources where they are required properly.
So once again, we are, the residents of South Africa, or South Africans, are bearing the brunt of political issues and people being sidelined for political issues while, you know, we suffer crime. But let me talk to you about the relationship you have with the National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, the police. Is there a relationship between private investigators and these crime-fighting organizations?
There's only one relationship, and that's every one of us 546 registered PIs in South Africa have a personal relationship with certain people. The best we find station level, you've got to persuade a policeman to do his work. It's the best way and the most successful way is through years of knowing people, ex-colleagues, etc. You start at the top and you phone a general, you say XYZ, need help, and you get referred that way. It's pretty scary to say that, especially on national television, but that's practically how it's working. There's a lot of cooperation between myself personally and certain individuals in various units in the police and various other investigative agencies. But it's literally based more on a personal friendship that's been built up, or old colleagues, etc. There's no official way that a PI can do anything. We are literally civilians with no authority that a policeman has. So, yeah, we're using our experience to do what has to be done legally, to give the police a completed docket, so to speak, where they are required then basically to get the necessary court orders to, for example, bank managers, that type of thing, for that info. And that is also a blockage in a lot of the cases I've investigated, getting that necessary Section 205, as we call it, to get the information or the evidence from banks and other institutions that are legally bound not to give it to anyone except with a court order.
Now, what advice would you give to people not to, you know, fall prey to cyber crime? I mean, for instance, I'm a woman. I love shopping. I love my clothes, and I might fall into the trap of trying to buy a beautiful pair of boots from somebody, pay the money, and then the person disappears. So, what kind of advice can you give?
Personally, I would never do that. If you cannot see the item or arrange to meet the person, and you go and watch or look at whatever you wanted to purchase, and in that way pay for it and receive your article so that you know it's right, don't take the chance. If someone offers you 50% return on an investment in 3 days, it's not possible. Otherwise, the whole world would be multi-millionaires. And one has to just think a bit practically, no matter how desperate you are or how much you'd like something. And if you do need to purchase things which often are cheaper, then use reputable companies. There are enough of them in the world that can supply you at a good rate. Don't take chances.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Weston, for your time here on All Angles. That is Steve Weston. He is a private investigator.